So last night I watched Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and this was one of my most anticipated films of 2026. Probably the most anticipated in my opinion, because I absolutely love Christopher Nolan. I had very, very high expectations from this film, and I've got to say it absolutely met them and exceeded them in so many ways. It's a 3-hour film. It is very long, but it didn't really feel like that in my opinion. The only thing that I was struggling with was the seats, because I watched it in IMAX, not 70mm IMAX unfortunately, because I think there's only 40 screenings across the whole world that show 70mm IMAX, but normal IMAX was still amazing anyway. The sound was ridiculous, and overall I just absolutely love this film. And if you haven't seen it already, go out and see it now. It is one of the most epic films I've ever seen. Some of the scenes in this film are just literally pure cinema. Like, you can't get any more epic than this. In my opinion, I absolutely love Christopher Nolan. He's probably my favorite director. And I've got to say, this is probably in my top 3 Christopher Nolan films. I would say it's my second favorite one. The top one is obviously, in probably a lot of people's opinions, The Dark Knight. I don't think he will ever beat that film. That is just a masterpiece. And second for me was Interstellar, but I do think The Odyssey, I think just because I prefer Greek mythology and stuff set in the past to sci-fi space, I think that's why it sets it up to second rather than Interstellar for me, even though I absolutely love Interstellar. It's absolutely amazing film. I don't know if it's just because of the hype, I've just watched it last night, but The Odyssey is right up there, and it is definitely, I think, second for me, because the more I think about it, the more I just want to go watch it. And this is like from the perspective of a filmmaker. I do filmmaking, like I'm a videographer full time. And before you say, well, you've not done a film, you're not a filmmaker. Well, I actually won Best Cinematographer for the short film that I shot last year called Fig. So this definitely wasn't given to me by the director just because we was doing it for fun, because I definitely won this. But yeah, last year I shot my first short film and I had such a great time filming that. So yes, I have shot a film before. So obviously not to a degree of The Odyssey or a full feature. It was a 15-minute short film, but it was my first one, and I definitely want to continue making more in the future. Anyway, back to The Odyssey. I have so many things that I want to say about this film. I'm not overly caught up on all of the Greek mythology lore and everything like that, so there was a few parts of this film that was a little bit confusing to me, because it was either said, like the explanation of the lore or what was going on was said in a quick one-liner, or like someone just said it in random conversation, which I might have missed, and you've really got to listen to the names and what's going on. But overall, just from like a filmmaking standpoint, this film is absolutely ridiculously well made. At the start of the film, I'd say it's a little bit confusing the way it's told, the story. Like at the start, the way it goes into his journey home, and then it talks about his battle at Troy. Then he's on this island with this woman, which I have forgot her name, and it kind of goes back and forth quite a lot in the first 15-20 minutes, I'd say, of that. And I wasn't sure where the story was going, but then it kind of hit into, oh, okay, this is now Assidious's journey home. And it kind of stuck with that for the majority of the film. And that was my favourite part of the whole film. The journey that he goes on to go home, and the actual conflicts that he goes through, and the challenges and the gods and everything he has to go through to try and get back home, was my favourite parts. There's so many things. I won't spoil this in this section. It's just my personal thoughts of the review of my film and from a filmmaking perspective. But wow, some of these scenes, you would have seen the ones from the trailer, the Cyclops scene, what an amazing, that's one of the best scenes I've seen. It's quite scary as well, and in IMAX with that massive loud sound and the massive big screen, it was just literally amazing to watch. The way the Cyclops was designed, I thought was really cool. The CGI with everything was really well made, but the cinematography of that scene was just amazing. I love how a lot of this film is shot. A lot of it tried to use practical and natural lighting, so when it was actually in the cave for the Cyclops, it was literally the only thing that was a light source was the fire, which is obviously what's going to happen because they're in a cave with a fire. That's obviously the only light source there is, but just the way it was made was just so cool. The way Assidious came into the cave and they were just silhouetted with the cave behind them. It actually reminded me when I went to the Peak District one time and I went inside a cave. It looked very similar to that. Now, I won't actually say it was a masterpiece in cinematography and filmmaking, and I'm not just saying that obviously because I want to be critical, because there was a lot of scenes in this and a lot of shots where the characters are just completely soft and out of focus. Now, I don't know if that's because they're shooting in 70mm IMAX and the focus peaking technology isn't as good as like digital cameras. I'm not really sure how IMAX cameras work. I'm not sure if that is the reason why, but I do think a big reason as well why a lot of people were soft is because it looked like a lot of the scenes, especially when it was like tight on the characters, they were using telephoto lenses and they were quite tight. So it was like a 50, 85mm probably a lot of the time. And it really did look like they were using severely shallow depth of field, so like maybe f1.8, f1.4 cinema lenses. Now, again, I could be wrong. The short film that I shot last year, I literally just used the Sony FX3 with a 24-70 f2.8, and a lot of the time I shot it at f2.8 because I didn't have the light-in power to be able to use like f5.6 to ensure a lot of things are in focus. I didn't even have a focus puller, so I was using autofocus as well. So that was quite tough, and a lot of them scenes, I was quite annoyed with myself because you can see one eye is in focus and the other eye is not. Well, a lot of the scenes in the Odyssey, like there's literally straight up shots where Anne Hathaway's character is completely soft and she's not sharp whatsoever. Then she leans into focus and then you can see the focus pull, and then she leans back out again and she's soft again. And it's not just one or two times, it is for the majority of the film. And there's a really important scene with Robert Pattinson's character where he is literally completely soft, like in the whole shot where he's talking. And it just, I don't know if it's because of me doing filmmaking, I noticed that a lot. I'm not sure if the everyday person is going to really notice that, but me and James, who I went to see that with, he noticed it as well straight away. It's not just one or two shots, it is a lot of scenes where they are out of focus. Now, again, IMAX is ridiculous. Like, I'll show you a quick rig now that I've actually seen. This rig is ridiculous. I've never shot on IMAX before. I probably will never shoot on IMAX, so I don't know what it's like. But I've heard that apparently, I think it's like you only got a maximum of 3 minutes per roll of the film that they're being used. And IMAX is very, very expensive. And this film obviously had a huge budget. So I think Christopher Nolan definitely prioritizes performance from the actors over focus and framing. Because at the end of the day, if you've only got a maximum of 3 minutes per roll of film, and obviously you want to shoot a 3-hour epic of the Odyssey, you can't constantly be going back and saying, oh, we've got to reshoot that because it's soft. The focus puller or the cinematographer Hoyt Van, I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, probably might have said that's soft, we need to do it again, but Christopher Nolan's probably so efficient and he probably doesn't really care that much because the performance of Anne Hathaway's character was probably the best it's been, or good enough, or he knows what he wants, that he's just said, no, we've just got to move on. And I'm actually pretty sure they actually wrapped filming, I think I heard it was like 7 or 10 days ahead of schedule. So that probably shows as well that he is probably just, we've got the shot, let's move on. It's out of focus, it doesn't matter. But that was probably the only thing that I did notice really. A lot of the stuff was shot on tight lenses. Again, maybe that's why it was so well, like how quickly they were wrapping filming, because a lot of the times in films nowadays, like a lot of the shots are just 85mm tight shot on the person, cut 85mm shot on the other person, because one, it's easy to look nice because it's a telephoto lens and they're probably using shallow depth of field to blur the background. It's probably just a quicker and easier way because of how tight the scheduling are on a lot of films nowadays. Whereas back in the day on like Jurassic Park with Steven Spielberg films, a lot of the scenes you would see, the whole background is completely in focus with the main character. Like there's not a lot of shallow depth of field at all. I think Spielberg liked shooting on like f5, f8 a lot of the scenes because he wanted to show the whole scene off. Whereas nowadays, people just want to completely kill that background and blur it. Like now, for example, I'm shooting on a 35mm, but I'm at f1.8. Obviously, a 35mm, you're going to see some more of the background here. But if it was shooting a film, like when I was shooting Fig, the short film, we weren't actually using a lot of actors. So we was actually using the director, James, literally one of his best mates and his best mate's granddad, who have never acted before. So they struggled learning their lines and delivering their lines. So we had to make sure that if they did have the good performance, that my job, I was making sure that they were in focus, they were framed well, and there was no camera shake or anything. So a lot of the time I did have to go at like 50 or 70mm at f2.8 to just try and get a clean shot, because if they got their lines right after like 10-15 minutes but my camera work was wrong, then that's really bad on me, because we've now got to hopefully that they can do it again. Obviously it looks nice and they can use wide lenses, and don't get me wrong, they use so many wide shots in this, and that was the standout of this film. The wide epic shots of like the boat on the sea, the wide epic shots of the landscapes, the big wide shots of the massive giants in the armor when they were battling, the big nice 35mm, 50mm tracking shots when he was going up to the cave, to the Cyclops' cave, when they were actually at Troy in the battle with the Trojan horse. All of them shots, don't get me wrong, it looked amazing. The lighting was great. And again, what I love about Nolan, so much of it is real. So much of it is real sets, practical explosions. And that's just things that sets it aside of other films nowadays. So many films nowadays are just CGI this, CGI that, let's put a green screen on, flat lighting. It just looks so lazy, it looks so soulless, it looks so boring. But the Odyssey was made with love, and the Odyssey was made with a craft that Nolan just absolutely loves. The cinematography that he uses on every film just is amazing. And the fact that they shot this whole film on IMAX cameras for every single shot is just ridiculous. And here's me saying, oh, they use a lot of tight lenses and a lot of things are out of focus. Look at the actual rig that they are using to do this. So it is, don't get me wrong, it still looks amazing at like 85mm tight shots, because you want to see the performance and that's what you're looking at. The story of him coming home, I absolutely love. Just him going to all of these different islands with the, I don't want to say too much without spoiling it, but there was one particular scene where they were on the boat, and I think this is in the trailer, where there's a massive whirlpool wind on the bottom and they have to go past it. That scene was epic, but there's one scene in particular where I won't get into why. It was at night on the sea, and there was a massive storm with lightning, and literally it was so loud, it was so like drawn in. It was actually hurting my eyes a bit because it was quite flashing quite a lot. But that scene was just absolutely amazing. Like, it just seemed so real. I would love to have seen the BTS of how they actually filmed that, because it just looked chaos. It looked crazy, and I was so drawn in, and I was so like in awe of what I was watching. Like, literally, when I say this is one of the most epic films I've ever watched, I'm not just saying that, because it is literally pure epicness on screen. Like, Matt Damon, the performances I actually thought were really good. Now, the one thing that is being criticised of the Odyssey is obviously they're Greeks, it's set in Greek mythology, and he's got a bunch of American and Englishmen to play it who are not putting on accents at all. Jon Bernthal is literally playing Jon Bernthal, the Punisher. Robert Pattinson kind of felt like he was playing himself. I don't know if that was the actual character, like his character might actually be like that, but it did just seem like he was playing Robert Pattinson, because it was kind of a wacky character, and Robert Pattinson's quite wacky in real life. I think Matt Damon was incredible in this film. I love Matt Damon in pretty much everything that I've seen him in. And surprisingly, who definitely proved me wrong and surprised me a lot, was Tom Holland. I thought Tom Holland was really good in this film, because he kind of is this like weak kind of character, and he plays that really, really well. Odyssey's son, and I think he'd grown a lot towards the end of the film, and he was just really good. I think he was one of the biggest like emotional parts of the film. Anne Hathaway I thought was good in parts. The action scenes were great in this. The sword fighting I thought was really, really cool, like the explosions, the big epic battles. The Trojan horse scene was amazing. There was a few parts in it was just, I kind of didn't want it to end, and it kind of was quite quick, and I was really drawn in from the trailer, and I kind of wish they didn't show all of it in the trailer, because they pretty much showed most of that in the trailer, and I was kind of wanting more. And for it being 3 hours, I do actually think it went quite quickly. The only thing is, I've seen a lot of people saying the third act is amazing, and don't get me wrong, the third act of this film is great, but I do think they could have chopped 5-10 minutes off the third act, because it did seem quite long, and it did seem a little bit slow in parts in the third act. But when it got to the final climax battle, man, was I like fully hooked and locked in watching this. And another thing I want to talk about is definitely the music. Ludwig Göransson, I think his name is. He is absolutely cooking at the minute. And oh my God, the music and the score in this film was so, so good. The score for The Giants was amazing. All I remember was thinking, holy shit, this is incredible, this score. It sounded so, so good. Just the sound design overall was amazing. Now, if you're a Nolan fan, you probably know that one of his biggest annoyances is having the absolute music turned up massively, and then the characters are whispering like this and you can't hear them. the music and the score is just so loud and their dialogue is so low. If I'm at home and I'm watching The Dark Knight, I'm turning it up when watching dialogue scenes and then turning it down again when there's an action scene. But luckily, I do think in this film it was mixed a lot better as well. You don't have to, you pretty much heard everyone and the music wasn't too loud when there were people talking. Obviously, when it was action scenes, the music was absolutely on fire, like ridiculous in that IMAX screening. But just overall, this film, I'd have to say I'll give it a 9 out of 10. I don't think IMAX is the biggest wow factor in my opinion. Like, yes, it's cool that they've shot it all in IMAX, but I'd happily just watch a film in standard screen normally, like how a lot of films are made. I do think it's more of a marketing gimmick to try and get you in to pay extra for seats. Obviously, it's nice having that extra height because you're seeing more of the screen. I just think sometimes it can be a little bit weird for framing, because for people who don't watch it in IMAX, obviously you've got to frame it in like a 16:9 or even like the anamorphic D-squeeze aspect ratio to be able to show it on normal screens. So when they're actually framing up with the IMAX screen, obviously they've got 70mm IMAX, which is absolutely huge and high, but they've also got an aspect marker of lower to make sure, well, we've got to make sure everything's in this frame so the everyday person can watch it at home, can watch it in their standard cinema screen. So you do get some weird framing composition options when shooting like that in IMAX, because like their eyes would be the dead center of the screen and then you've just got some random massive height in IMAX. So it's just like, why is that there? But in the normal cinema screen, their eye is probably on like the rule of third, for example. The head might be chopped out a little bit or cut off, so the framing's a little bit nicer for that screening. But when it's drawn up in IMAX, like for example, this photo that was actually this exact scene with Zendaya and Matt Damon walking through this beach, like Matt Damon was right in the bottom left corner in focus. Zendaya was like center of the screen talking and out of focus, and then they had massive space above them and to the right. It just seemed like everything was crammed into the bottom corner. Now obviously this rig was crazy and it's on a dolly, so they're walking back. So it was probably quite hard to frame it because of like the height and everything. That's probably why they might have been lower down, because the camera might have been a little bit too high. I just thought stuff like that I did notice a little bit was a little bit weird framing wise. But overall, I still would say definitely go out and see it in IMAX if you can, because you're getting more of the screen. Obviously seeing more is better. Overall, you have to go and see this. One of the most epic films I've ever seen. Top 2 Nolan films for me. I don't think it beats The Dark Knight, and I think that's just because I love Batman and that film is just absolutely incredible. I'm going to give it at least a 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10. It doesn't hit that 10 out of 10 masterpiece just because I do think it's a little bit too long in some parts. For me, the framing and the out of focus elements does kind of, I'm thinking about it, so I'm kind of not thinking about the story or what they're saying, because sometimes I'm like, oh, that Zendaya is completely out of focus. Robert Pattinson is completely soft there. That's what I'm thinking as a filmmaker. Like I said, everyday person might not care about that, but stuff like that does affect it a little bit. The odd shot here and there, but I think because it was so much in this film, it was a little bit distracting for me. And don't get me wrong, I don't blame them because of that massive rig, and it is so hard. Let me know what you think. If you did enjoy this kind of like movie review and my thoughts from a filmmaker's perspective on how it was made and what I thought of the shots and this and that and the story, then leave your comment below. I could do this on potential other movies in the future as well, but I just had to talk about the Odyssey and Christopher Nolan, Matt Damon, because like I said, this film is incredible. I absolutely loved it, and definitely go out and see it. So thank you very much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe if you did enjoy, and I'll see you on the next one. See you later.